Oh, yeah. The Duke basketball team delivered a message on Saturday night inside Madison Square Garden. They're the best in the world.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So excited to have you here with us today on Monday, February 24th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. Today's show, we got to focus about the game on Saturday. Duke men's basketball destroying Illinois inside Madison Square Garden and delivering a statement to the rest of the college basketball world, proving to everyone just how good they are. I cannot wait to break this entire game down with our good friend Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham. It's going to be an epic conversation that you get to be a part of here today. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. You can see us each and every day. Watch our show on YouTube as well. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video. Share it with your friends. Again, recently surpassed 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you to all the everydayers out there who have been a part of the ride, a part of the journey, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, the aforementioned Kevin Connelly is here. He was inside Madison Square Garden on Saturday night. He watched the Duke beatdown where the Blue Devils score a season-high 110 points. They win by 43. 7 different players are in double figures. It's the worst loss the Illini basketball program has ever had in any game whatsoever. I'm missing a few little tidbits and notes about this game, Kevin, when you look at the numbers, because it was truly that dominating.
Yeah, I think it was the biggest margin of victory Duke's ever had at Madison Square Garden, the building that they play just about once every season. The list goes on. And kind of what I said after the game, this season has been a list of impressive victories for Duke. This was their most impressive, though, just with the pure dominance from start to finish, and that there was no let up and they go wire to wire. I know Illinois is going through some stuff right now with injuries and illness and lack of practice time, and add all that together, and they hadn't necessarily been trending in the right direction over the last 2.5 weeks. Now they have 3 straight losses by double digits, but still Duke able to dominate this game, and Illinois really never had a shot outside of the first 8 minutes of this game.
The analytics are crazy when you look at what happened after this game took place, where Duke climbed to in terms of their KenPom rankings. In historical figures, it's a Duke team that is touching things we really haven't ever seen before. They are so impressive when they're on their A game, and that's what we saw Duke against an Illinois team that, let's face it, we talked about it more as Johnson was going to be out with the broken wrist. They had been sick, but for the most part, Illinois had everybody available that they needed to have available in a game like this, and it didn't matter. From the get-go, Sion James hits the opening three-pointer. Duke never looks back. They never trailed in this game. It's a 17-point game at halftime, 54 points in the first half, a season high for Duke in that figure. How in the world do you follow up a 54-point half? Why don't you throw in 56 for good measure in the second half? Like, this is Arizona State exhibition level that we saw Duke at the beginning of the year. It's wild what they did on Saturday.
No, that's a really good point, and I hadn't even thought about that exhibition game from back in October when they won. I forget off the top of my head, I'm forgetting what the final score was, but it felt like they won by 40 or 50 in that game as well. The way to defend this Duke team, you have to pick your poison. And Illinois, at least in that first half, tried to say, hey, we're not going to let this Flagg guy try and beat us. And I thought they actually did a really good job on him in the first half. I thought they bottled him up well. He picked up a couple of fouls, didn't play. I think he only played like 10 minutes in that first half because he had the 2 fouls, didn't really get going from the field. And they kind of said, hey, Sion James, if we're going to lose to you, we're okay with it being because you're red hot. And he made 2 of his first 4 3-pointers. Duke's first basket was a James 3. And then they were off and running. And then Isaiah Evans, you better not let him make his first shot or his first 2 shots of a game. Because when he makes his first 2 shots in a game. He's a guy that already doesn't lack any confidence, but the confidence even grows more when he's really firing from deep. And he actually ends up being the leading scorer in this game for Duke with 17 points. And that was with him picking up 2 fouls in that first half as well. And that's where the tone was set. I mean, when you shoot 54% from the field, 50% from 3-point range, and you make 13 free throws in a half, that typically is going to add up to 54 points. And they did the exact same thing in the second half, even with most of the walk-ons playing the final 2.5 minutes.
Dominant performance for the Duke basketball team, 110-67, the final score, as the Blue Devils pick up their 24th win on the season. Remember, in both of Jon Scheyer's first 2 seasons, Duke went 27-9, so they are almost to that 27-game figure. Also, Jon Scheyer 3 wins away from setting the all-time record for ACC head coaches with most wins in their first 3 seasons as a head coach. So what he's doing with this program, he's reminding the world that Duke is still the standard when it comes to college basketball. That's where I want to go. We're going to dive into the box score in just a moment, but kind of big picture of it all. Championships are what matter. We didn't win it all because of a game like this, but what did you learn? What did this statement to the basketball world say following Duke's game on Saturday night, Kevin? What's the one big thought?
For me, it's when this team plays like this, and certainly that's a lot to say. And I think the biggest comparison would be when Duke with Zion and RJ and Cam Reddish beat Kentucky in the opener and completely bludgeoned them. When this team plays their A game, and I think at least offensively, this was their A game, I don't think there's anybody in the country that can beat them. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this game. I know Auburn's really good. I know Alabama's really good. I know Florida's really good. When Duke plays like this, holding Illinois to 2 of 16 from 3-point range, they missed all 16 of their 3-pointers in the first half. When Duke plays like this on both sides of the floor, I don't think there's a team that could beat them in the country.
I agree. I'm so fired up about what this team can do. Every single season, we've got a national championship standard. This season of all of them feels like it's the time to go and do that. They shut down Cooper Flagg in the first half, and Duke still beat them by 43. Cooper got it going in the second half. I mean, what do? It's unbelievable what this Duke team is capable of. There's a matter of being capable of it and actually going out there and doing it. We're seeing Duke do it more times than not. Let's just hope we don't get caught in an NCAA tournament game and this turn into one of the all-time great what-ifs. All right, 7 guys in double figures. Way more impressive things to dive into in the box score. All of that and more coming up after a timeout here on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. That's right, March basketball is right around the corner, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, it's easy, and it keeps every single game exciting. You can build lineups each and every week when you look at individual player props in basketball. Do you got the guy scoring more points or less points? How many rebounds are on the way? You can do all of that. It's quick and easy, fast payouts, and so much more with Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Prize Picks is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, let's keep this show rolling. We've got Kevin Connelly here from Ball Durham. We're talking about the Duke win over Illinois on Saturday inside Madison Square Garden, 110-67. We talked about it a little bit. Cooper Flagg, limited. Foul trouble was one thing. Also wasn't overly aggressive in some areas in the first half because his teammates were cooking a little bit. So you really didn't slow the guy down. He just wasn't necessarily a factor. And here Duke is winning by 43, Kev.
Yeah, mention those 2 fouls, 6 points, was just 1 of 4 from the field. Got to the free throw line a couple of times, but you kind of felt him really be a little bit more aggressive in the second half. Got a couple of steals that led to runouts, some big time dunks that obviously capture some headlines because Cooper Flagg throwing these big time breakaway dunks at Madison Square Garden, had a big end one and hit a 3 as well in that second half. So scored 10 in the second half, finishing with 16. And again, when you're up this many points and you know how important he is to your team, you're not going to play him that much. I mean, he plays just over 23 minutes. You look at this entire Duke team, nobody played more than 28 minutes. In fact, Knueppel played just under 28 minutes. It was like 27 minutes and 53 seconds or something like that. He played the most minutes on the team. So, but Jon Scheyer did a really good job at going deep into the bench. Caleb Foster, I know, has been a topic of conversation around this Duke team. Duke was up 30, and he still didn't get off the bench until there was about 7 minutes left to go in the second half. So I think it's pretty certain that you can't expect anything from him going forward. And anything you do get, you certainly take because it's great. But he's not going to be a key factor in this rotation when it gets dwindled down to that 8 or 9 guys in the ACC and NCAA tournaments. But even
in that, though, 7 minutes, Caleb Foster still comes through with those 12 points, 5 of 6, 2 of 2 from 3-point range. So not to cut you off there, it is becoming more and more clear as we get further into the season. Not a whole lot of Caleb Foster, but what I love to see is that he was aggressive when he was out there on the floor. He was appreciative of the playing time that he got. He took advantage of the moments, whereas you could have seen a guy that was just ho-hum with it. It doesn't matter. We're going to win this game. They don't care about me anymore. I didn't play. We didn't see that at all from Caleb.
No, not at all. And I do think that's good, but you do kind of wonder what happened this year, expecting to take a major sophomore jump and really didn't come away with much. You look at other guys. Obviously, we touched on Isaiah Evans already. I thought Pat Gungba played really well, and obviously he's going to have more minutes coming down the stretch here with Maliq Brown out with the dislocated shoulder, which I guess it could be a good sign. I'm not going to call myself a self-proclaimed expert on dislocated shoulders. I've never had one, knock on wood, and hopefully I don't have one anytime soon. But I guess it was a good sign that he wasn't in a sling. He was just in a regular warm-up, so not being in a sling, I think, was a good sign. And I think Mason Gillis is still going to find his way in this rotation, playing about 20 minutes against Illinois. So when push comes to shove, I do think this rotation is going to be 8 to 9 guys, pending Maliq Brown's status, because I do think Pat Gungba has shown that he can produce it in limited capacity, even with Brown healthy and getting minutes on the floor.
Kev, we were over 10 minutes into our conversation here today before we even mentioned Maliq Brown was injured, right? I mean, that just typically you've got one of your key players. He means so much to this team. He's missing a game. There's a big impact with how the game goes because this guy wasn't there. Duke wins by 43, and in a lot of ways, it's an afterthought that Maliq Brown, one of your finest players, wasn't even available.
Yes, I agree. I will say that, and I think especially because of how well Duke played offensively. But if we look at defensively in the first half, I'm not sure if I've ever seen shooting splits like I did that what Illinois had. They were 15 of 18 from 2-point range. Yeah. I mean, that is incredible. And then they were 0 of 16 from 3-point range. I mean, that's just a split that you don't see. And it's hard to even wrap your brain around that Illinois can be 15 of 18. Duke couldn't stop them on 2-point field goal attempts, yet they couldn't hit the backside of a barn on a 3-point field goal. And they got to the free throw line a little bit, which made it a 17-point game at halftime. And then obviously, I think Illinois Duke played very good defense in the second half. Don't get me wrong on that, but I think also a little bit was like Illinois looking up at the scoreboard and saying, hey, we're in Madison Square Garden and we're getting flat out embarrassed here against Duke, and kind of throwing in the towel a little bit. So certainly I will credit Duke's defense for making those adjustments in the second half, because as you see on your screen, you can see they only shot 29% from the floor in that second half as Duke just really poured it on. But I think a little bit of that was like Illinois not quitting, but shrugging your shoulders and saying, all right, let's move on to our next game.
The Illini shot more free throws than Duke did, also turned the ball over 9 times compared to 6 for Duke. So Duke did a great job taking care of the basketball. But to your point, it wasn't like one of these games where Duke forced a million turnovers. There were only 9 of them. They just forced these outside jump shots, and Illinois was missing them in the first half. Duke wins the rebounding battle by 14. That's one of the widest margins we've seen this entire season for Duke on the boards. They out-rebounded Illinois in this one 44-30. And when you go into the game, really enjoyed getting to listen to Gus Johnson and Jim Jackson call the game, by the way, on Fox. But when you're getting to listen to folks talk about the size of these teams, Illinois was a team that for the most part matched up a little bit better with Duke. And yet the Blue Devils still dominated the boards, winning by 14.
Yeah, one thing I'll add first on the turnovers, Duke turned Illinois' 9 turnovers into 20 points. That is a great ratio to have. And then kind of as you said with the rebounding numbers and the size that Illinois, the challenge they could have presented to Duke, Duke wins points in the paint 52-40. Duke put up 52 points in the game against Illinois. So despite them having some size, they proved very little resistance to Duke. And the biggest thing, 16 offensive rebounds turned into 27 second chance points. Illinois only had 8 second chance points in the entire game off 10 offensive rebounds. So you look at the points off turnovers and you look at the discrepancy inside, that was a major, obviously, determining factor in this game. And that's not even hitting really on the three-point shot where Duke shoots 50% and Illinois shoots 7%.
What I love as well, and again, for folks watching on YouTube, you're able to see the box score on the screen right now. We'll get to the assists in a moment because that was great for the Blue Devils on 40 made buckets to have 28 assists. How about just the shots distribution simply? In a lot of these games early this season, I think a lot about the losses to Kentucky and Kansas. You're going to see a whole lot of Cooper Flagg, a whole lot of Knueppel. Double-digit shot attempts for those guys and way more than the rest of their opponents. Flagg had 10, Proctor had 9, Knueppel had 9, Malawach and James had 9 shots, Foster had 6, Evans had 8, Gongba had 6. I mean, what games have there been this season where it was that even in terms of sharing the basketball and attempting the shots? Take assists out of it because we'll get to the ball movement in a moment, but just if you're open, take the shot. Have faith in one another, and that's what Duke did. I've never seen a game this season where the shot attempts were this evenly distributed across our roster.
Yeah, and not to go back and harp on that season opener against Kentucky with Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett, but a lot of people said that team peaked in the first game of the season. And you can agree to disagree with that statement or whatnot. But I think right now, this was the peak, at least, of what we've seen so far from the offense. As you mentioned with the shot distribution, I know we're going to get into the 28 assists on 40 made field goals. And did Illinois have something to do with that and providing very little resistance against this Duke team? Yeah, of course. But still, there were 5 guys out there at least trying to stop them from scoring. And they had absolutely no success whatsoever. Duke got any shot they wanted out on the court, and they were unselfish. And I think that goes a long way into kind of explaining how good this team is and how good this team can be and how they can put together a special run throughout the rest of the season here.
It's going to be fun to watch this Duke season continue to move forward each and every day with the way that they're playing. So fired up about what Duke can accomplish here in 2025. As March nears, we're getting closer to the big tournament at the end of the year in a pursuit of a national championship trophy. Let's continue our conversation with Kevin Connelly after we take our final break here on today's show. Our show today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Kevin Connelly's here with us from Ball Durham. We're talking about the Duke basketball victory that they had over Illinois on Saturday, 110-67, the final score. Duke, 28 assists on 40 made buckets. Sharing is caring. It's the name of the game, man. And everybody was passing that ball around. It was humming.
Yeah, it really was. And you look at the numbers. Sion James led the way with 6. Cooper Flagg had 5. Tyrese Proctor, who is the point guard, had 4. And it just goes on and on. Even the big fella, Kamen Malawach, getting a pair of assists in this game.
Gongba had 3 assists. Like, people always highlighting Maliq Brown's passing ability. I think Gongba's seeing a little bit of that and doing it himself.
It's tough to continue to find the words just to kind of illustrate how dominant Duke was in this game and how they did everything and anything they wanted. It really is difficult just to try to piece it all together, because it feels like you're just reiterating yourself, because you're saying Duke was so good doing this and they were so good doing that. And I mean, it's just continuous repetition, because that's how good they were.
Duke wins by 43 points, sending a statement. And we talk about a game like this. It's a non-conference game against Illinois in the pursuit of an ACC championship, which Duke is in a really good position right now with just 4 league games left. They've got the lead on Clemson. Even though Clemson did beat them head-to-head, if Duke can continue out and play good basketball, they're going to be ACC championships at the end. But you were there on Saturday. You've heard Jon Scheyer talk about it a whole lot lately. It seems like maybe this is going to be something that continues for Duke, Kevin. Why is that a good thing for Duke if they were to continue to add these late season non-conference games at a neutral site?
Well, at least on paper, when this game was scheduled, Illinois had projected to be a really good team. And you're thinking, all right, this is going to be an NCAA tournament-like atmosphere. This is going to be a Sweet 16, Elite 8 type game inside Madison Square Garden, the cathedral of basketball. And it's going to prepare this team for the NCAA tournament. Now, when Jon Scheyer booked this game, I don't think he thought the ACC was going to be as bad as it is. And it's kind of funny enough, we've been talking about all year about how down the ACC is, but Duke hadn't beat an ACC team by 43 points. And then they go on the road, or they go on a neutral side, I should say, and they play Illinois, and they beat them by 43 points. So I think Jon Scheyer still liked this game and liked this idea of playing a non-conference game this late in the season in a neutral venue to try to prepare his team for the NCAA tournament. And you mentioned the ACC standings. And yes, Duke still has a 1-game lead over Clemson. And I mean, if you're Clemson, just how are you not kicking yourself that you blew a triple overtime game at home against Georgia Tech? Because if they had won that game, JJ, they're in first place.
Right.
Like, you look at this Clemson team, 14-2 on the season. And if they had won that game and they were 15-1, they have the head-to-head tiebreaker over Duke in their only meeting of the regular season. So if they don't lose that game to Georgia Tech, man, they are in first place right now and in the driver's seat to win the ACC regular season championship. And how wild is that to say when we're talking and having a conversation, is Duke the best team in the country? And by a tiebreaker, Clemson could theoretically win the league's conference regular season title. It's
insane. And I'm glad that, shout out the Yellow Jackets. They knocked off Louisville. They knocked off Clemson.
And even Louisville, kind of bringing that up. I mean, I know that Duke-Louisville game was in December, and Louisville was coming off of a tough couple of weeks where they were in the battle for Atlantis, and they had guys injured and ruled out for the season, and Pat Kelsey was trying to put the piece together with glue and duct tape, and now they've gotten healthy and played great basketball. But even that game, a game that Louisville was still even leading in, I think, at halftime and in the second half, if they win that game, they're 15-1 in the ACC. And you look at Louisville and their 2 losses, funny enough, the other one was to Georgia Tech as well. So the Yellow Jackets, kind of the thorns in the side of the 2 teams looking up at Duke right now in the ACC regular season standings.
All right, 4 games left for Duke in conference play before the conference tournament and the NCAA tournament. You've got Miami, Florida State, Wake Forest, North Carolina, the 4 schools that Duke will play to close out the regular season. And let me give this line to folks once again, talking about the head coach. Jon Scheyer is now 3 wins away from setting the record for most victories in the first 3 seasons by an ACC head coach. Bill Guthridge won 80 from 1997 until 2000. Scheyer's on his way. What are we learning about Jon Scheyer and this Duke basketball program if we didn't already know this already, Kev?
That he's a great coach, that he's an elite coach. He is one of those upper echelon coaches right now in college basketball. And I was one who had some questions and criticized him a little bit earlier in this season, especially coming off those losses against Kentucky and against Kansas, where the same mistakes were made late in the game that cost this team victories. Now, I guess you could make the argument that some of those same mistakes came up in the final minute against Clemson, but I don't think that's any of Jon Scheyer's fault. And I said that right here on your program with Cooper Flagg slipping on a wet spot on the floor, which kind of ended up costing Duke the game. That's not Jon Scheyer's fault. He drew up the play. Maybe if the floor is dry and Cooper Flagg doesn't slip, we're having a different tune, and Duke is 16-0 right now in ACC play. So I think we've seen this team get better as the season has gone on. I think we've seen more advanced and developed offensive concepts from November and December now here to late February. And I think Jon Scheyer has proven right now that he is a major contender, not only for the ACC Coach of the Year, which I think is going to be very difficult, honestly, for him to win just because what Pat Kelsey has done at Louisville in one season, but I also think he's heavily in the conversation for the National Coach of the Year as well.
All right, so Duke 24-3 now on the year. They've got an opportunity to play Miami now, then 3 more games to follow in league play before getting into the conference tournament, destroying Illinois by 43 points. And this Miami game has way more intrigue to it now that we're hearing these reports of Jay Lucas possibly set to become the next head coach of the Miami Hurricanes. That's a teaser. It's a preview for tomorrow's show, where Kevin and I are going to be back together talking about the intrigue here and that sort of thing. In the meantime, though, Kevin, I know people can go to your website and check out a lot of good stuff.
Yep, balldurham.com. We're fully on top of everything over there on Duke basketball. It's the best time of the year in college basketball, late February, gearing up for March Madness. And we got content over every single day over at Ball Durham. So we have a lot of late nights to get that content up for you. So really appreciate it if all the Duke fans and the ACC fans and the college basketball fans come over and give us a read every day at balldurham.com.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, Kevin, all right?
Thanks, JJ. Take care.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. As mentioned, he's going to be back with us tomorrow. Is Jay Lucas going to Miami? What does this mean for Duke? What does it mean for the game tomorrow night as the Blue Devils are going to be down in Coral Gables, set to take on the Hurricanes? Tons of intrigue when we take a look at a game like this. Going to be pretty awesome to discuss. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.